Captain Elias Vance had never been to a gathering like this. The Elysium Orbital, a massive space station orbiting the glittering star Solara IX, was filled with beings from every corner of the galaxy. Some were tall and crystalline, reflecting the light like living prisms. Others had scales that shimmered like liquid metal. Many had multiple limbs, some with wings, some with tails. And yet, amid all these astonishing forms, Elias felt completely at ease. He had always been drawn to the unknown, and tonight he thrived on it. The grand hall was a swirl of color and sound. Music floated through the air, a haunting melody played by alien instruments that Elias couldn't name, yet somehow understood instinctively. The floors shimmered underfoot, reflecting the soft lights that hung like tiny stars from the ceiling. He moved confidently through the crowd, his human form ordinary among the extraordinary, but his presence carried a confidence few aliens could ignore. Humans, after all, had a certain audacity that no species could quite match, and Elias had it in abundance. He was scanning the crowd when he first saw her. She stood alone near a cluster of floating crystal chandeliers, her figure tall and lithe. Her skin was pale, almost luminescent, casting a faint glow even in the station's bright light. Her hair fell like liquid night around her shoulders, and her eyes, those eyes were impossible to ignore. They shone faintly in the dim, not with reflection, but with some inner light. Every gaze that met her seemed to hesitate, as if sensing something ancient and powerful lurking beneath her calm exterior. Elias felt a spark of curiosity. Most beings here avoided her. They whispered among themselves, stepping back or offering nervous bows, but Elias felt no fear. Instead, he felt a thrill. Humans had a way of walking straight into danger and turning it into opportunity. He strode toward her, offering a confident smile. "May I have this dance?" he asked, voice calm, friendly, yet carrying the subtle charm that humans often possessed when dealing with the unknown. She looked at him, and for a heartbeat, time seemed to stop. Her lips curved into a smile, slow and deliberate, the kind that made him catch his own breath without realizing it. She extended her hand, delicate yet strong. Elias took it without hesitation, letting her guide him to the center of the hall. The moment he stepped into the open space with her, the music seemed to shift. It became softer, slower, almost as if acknowledging the two of them alone. Elias tried to match her movements. She moved with a grace that was almost impossible to mirror, her body bending and flowing with uncanny precision. Yet humans had an advantage: adaptability. He studied her rhythm, noticed patterns, and found himself keeping pace, laughing softly when he stumbled slightly. She tilted her head, a curious amusement in her gaze. Most species would have noticed his clumsy attempts and dismissed him, but she didn't. She was watching him, truly watching, as if measuring something beyond mere skill. Elias felt a strange thrill, realizing that the game wasn't about dancing alone. It was about understanding her. As the dance continued, he felt something unusual. The air around her seemed to shimmer, and he caught a faint scent, metallic and sweet, like nothing he had ever experienced. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it stirred something deep inside him. Elias shook off the feeling, attributing it to nerves or perhaps the excitement of the moment. Humans were resilient. They adapted quickly, even when faced with sensations that defied logic. By now, a small crowd had gathered, watching the two of them move in perfect sync. Elias noticed their expressions: awe, fear, admiration. Many of the aliens whispered among themselves, uncertain whether to approach or flee. Elias found it amusing. Humans had always been underestimated, often thought fragile and weak. Yet here he was, standing toe-to-toe with a creature far older and more powerful than himself, not with weapons, but with confidence, charm, and quick thinking. "You are different," she said finally, her voice melodic yet carrying a sharp edge. It wasn't a question, it was a statement that seemed to linger in the air. Elias tilted his head slightly, smiling. "And you're mysterious," he replied. "I like that, makes life interesting." It was the same reason they had survived countless challenges in their history: curiosity, boldness, and the audacity to face the unknown. As the dance drew on, Elias noticed something strange. He glanced at the polished floor and saw no reflection of her. For a moment he thought it was a trick of the light, but then he realized it wasn't just the floor. Mirrors, shiny surfaces, even the subtle glint of a decorative crystal refused to reflect her form. A chill ran through him. Most humans would have panicked, but he didn't. He was trained to adapt, to observe, to think fast. He made a subtle mental note: this was not an ordinary being. The dance ended with a flourish. Elias bowed slightly, trying not to reveal the faint racing of his heart. She laughed softly, a sound like wind over silver leaves, and inclined her head gracefully. "You are bold, human," she said. "I like that. Perhaps you are more interesting than most." He turned to move back into the crowd, thinking he had survived the encounter with charm alone. But then he noticed it, a shadow flickering behind one of the pillars. Not a shadow caused by light, but a darker shape, a presence that moved with purpose. He felt the faintest twinge of caution, the human instinct warning him that this dance was only the beginning. Yet Elias grinned. Humans were built for the unexpected. Danger didn't frighten them, it sharpened them. And he, Captain Elias Vance, had faced countless perils in the uncharted reaches of space. This would be no different. The alien woman moved away into the crowd, her figure disappearing briefly, only to reappear in a different spot, as if she had anticipated every movement he might make. Elias' pulse quickened, not with fear but with excitement. Humans had always risen to challenges with creativity, courage, and ingenuity. That would be his advantage here. For the first time in centuries, someone at the station noticed the faint glow in her eyes and the way the air seemed to bend around her. Yet they did nothing, frozen by awe and fear. Elias, human to the core, simply walked forward with steady steps, curiosity blazing in his eyes. He had no idea that he had just invited one of the most ancient and powerful beings in the galaxy to take interest in him, and that his life was about to change forever. By the time the gala began to wind down, Elias was already replaying every moment of the dance, analyzing her movements, her words, and the subtle hints of power she had revealed. Most humans might have dismissed it as a strange encounter with a beautiful alien, but Elias had learned long ago that nothing extraordinary should be ignored. In the vast, perilous reaches of space, survival depended on observation, insight, and boldness. And he had plenty of all three. As the night drew to a close, the alien woman vanished among the other guests, leaving only the faintest trace of her presence behind, a chill in the air, a shimmer in the light, and the faintest scent of something metallic and sweet. Elias inhaled, unconsciously reaching for the memory, the challenge, and the thrill of it all. Humans had always faced the unknown with courage, curiosity, and the daring to step where others feared. And as Elias Vance stood alone on the deck of the Elysium orbital, he knew one thing for certain. This encounter was only the beginning. And somewhere out there, the alien woman, the one who had danced with him, was already planning her next move. Elias smiled. Humans always thrived against the odds. This would be no exception. The next day, Captain Elias Vance found himself unable to stop thinking about the alien woman. Her name, Lysera, had floated through his mind repeatedly, like a melody he couldn't forget. Even among the dazzling beings of the Elysium orbital, she stood out, not just because of her pale, glowing skin or her striking eyes, but because of the aura she carried. There was something ancient about her, something that demanded attention and respect. Humans had a natural curiosity, and Elias' curiosity was now an obsession. He wandered through the station's bustling corridors, trying to focus on his duties, but the images of the previous night kept coming back. He remembered the way her gaze seemed to penetrate through his thoughts, the way the shadows seemed to shift around her, and the faint metallic scent that lingered in the air when she had been near. Most humans would have felt fear. Elias felt a thrill. Fear, after all, could be useful. It sharpened the mind, made every decision more precise. As he turned a corner near the observation deck, he noticed a figure leaning against the railing. It was Lysera. She had moved silently, almost like a shadow herself, yet she had a presence that could not be ignored. Elias approached cautiously but confidently, keeping his hands visible and his posture relaxed. Humans had a way of showing respect without bowing, a subtle assertion of their individuality. "Captain Vance," she said, her voice smooth and melodic, carrying the faintest edge of amusement. "I wondered if curiosity would lead you back. You're intriguing. Bold even. That is why you interest me. I have observed countless civilizations, seen empires rise and fall, and yet your species continues to astonish me. Few creatures would approach me without fear, and fewer still would do so with a mixture of courage and charm. Humans had always survived where others failed, not because of raw power, but because of ingenuity and spirit. And here in this alien station, he was being recognized for it. "I like to learn about the unknown," he said. "It keeps life alive." For a moment, she seemed almost human, almost vulnerable, but Elias sensed the depth beneath her calm exterior. There was a history there, a weight of centuries that he could only guess at. Humans respected longevity, resilience, and experience, but they also valued courage, especially when it confronted the unknown. "You wish to know more about me," she said softly, though her words carried an unmistakable authority. Few ask, even fewer survive the answers. She took a step closer, and Elias noticed the subtle shift in the air. The temperature seemed to drop, and a faint shadow stretched across the deck, though there was no visible source. He did not flinch. Humans had always faced danger with creativity and courage. It was what had allowed them to explore worlds that others considered uninhabitable, to survive threats far beyond their size or strength. "You are bold," she said. "Most would flee at this point. You remain. Running comes later if it's necessary." He knew instinctively that this was no ordinary being. "Do you know what I am, Captain Vance?" she asked, her tone calm, yet carrying an edge of danger. Elias paused, considering his words. "Something powerful," he said finally. "Something ancient. You have lived longer than most species here, and you carry knowledge that few can comprehend." "I am Lysera, queen of a lineage older than many stars in this galaxy. I have seen civilizations rise and fall, and I have maintained my reign through time, patience, and strength." He decided to test the limits of this ancient being to see if diplomacy could work where fear would fail. "And what is a queen like you doing here on a station filled with strangers and potential rivals?" he asked. Lysera's smile deepened. "Observation mostly, some amusement. I find your species unusual. You are fragile in many ways, yet your spirit is resilient. You act without the paralysis that often plagues others. That is rare. Yet you haven't." They had survived hostile planets, treacherous seas, and deadly encounters because they could think, adapt, and act with courage. This was simply another test, and he intended to pass. "Then I suppose," he said, taking a careful step closer, "we are negotiating our interaction. Or perhaps I am testing your limits." Adaptation was humanity's greatest strength. "You test me," he said slowly, "and I do not falter. Humans are curious, yes, but we are also resilient and clever. We do not yield easily, even when faced with forces we do not fully understand. Many would mistake fearlessness for ignorance, yet you combine bravery with insight. That is admirable." "You could teach me," he said lightly, "or I could teach you something. Perhaps we can exchange knowledge instead of hostility." Elias realized that he was no longer just an explorer. He was a participant in a delicate negotiation. One wrong move could end badly, yet one careful step could forge a bond that neither species had ever seen before. "You do not fear me," Lysera said, her voice softer now, though still carrying the weight of authority. "That is unusual and bold. I wonder, what else does your species possess that surprises even me? Perhaps you are worth observing further. Most would have fled or screamed or tried to fight me outright. You did none of these. Instead, you engaged me on your terms. That is remarkable." Humans had always faced the unknown with a mixture of respect and daring, and he knew that this approach had earned him a chance at survival, and maybe something more. "You will learn more," Lysera said finally, her tone almost casual yet carrying the weight of centuries. "But for now, remember this. Curiosity is your ally, courage your shield, and wit your weapon. Fail to use any of them, and survival becomes far more difficult." Humans were underestimated across the stars, yet they persisted not because of brute strength but because of resilience, creativity, and spirit. Tonight had proved it once again, and somewhere nearby Lysera watched him leave, her expression unreadable. She had met many species, but humans were different. Their spirit, their cleverness, their audacity, it intrigued her. Perhaps they were worth more than she had first assumed. Elias did not know it yet, but the next steps of this encounter would test his courage, his ingenuity, and his ability to adapt in ways he could never have imagined. Humans thrived when the odds were against them, and that trait had just begun to shine. The game had begun. The station hummed with life as Captain Elias Vance moved through the corridors of Elysium Orbital. Normally, he navigated these halls with ease, greeting familiar faces, checking on supplies, and observing the fascinating array of alien cultures. But today was different. Ever since his encounter with Lysera, the mysterious alien woman, a tension lingered in the air. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet Elias felt it in every step he took. His instincts, honed over years of exploration and survival, told him that this was not just curiosity or diplomacy, it was a challenge. He walked with measured steps, scanning the crowd for signs of the Queen. Some whispered when they saw him pass, glances filled with awe and fear. They had observed the way Lysera had interacted with him the night before, and they knew something extraordinary was unfolding. Humans were underestimated in most galactic circles, seen as fragile and unpredictable. Elias, however, had long learned that these qualities were exactly what made humans formidable. Adaptable, clever, and bold, humans thrived when the odds were stacked against them. As he turned a corner near the observation deck, he saw her, Lysera, waiting. She emerged from the shadows as if she had been there all along, her presence commanding attention without a single word. Her glowing eyes scanned him, assessing, weighing, measuring. Elias met her gaze steadily. Humans were taught from birth to trust their instincts, and his told him that retreat would signal weakness. "You seem restless, Captain Vance," Lysera said, her voice smooth and melodic, yet carrying the undeniable edge of power. "Restless? Maybe," Elias replied casually, though his mind was alert. "Or maybe I'm just aware that curiosity can be dangerous, especially when it involves someone like you. It can lead to knowledge or peril. Which path will you choose?" She stepped forward, graceful as ever, and the shadows seemed to follow her movements. With a sudden shift, she disappeared behind a pillar, only to reappear several meters away. Elias' pulse quickened, not from fear, but from focus. Humans had survived countless dangers not because of speed or strength alone, but because of observation, reasoning, and ingenuity. Lysera's voice came from the shadows. "You are clever, human. I admire that. Most would have fled long before now." The air felt heavier, more oppressive, and the shadows grew denser. His instincts told him that the game had shifted from observation to a subtle test of skill. Humans had always excelled in adapting to unexpected conditions, using strategy, speed, and creativity. He knew this would be no different. Lysera emerged fully into view, her form both elegant and intimidating. She moved with supernatural grace, her eyes briefly glowing crimson. The faint metallic scent that had followed her last night was stronger now, almost intoxicating. Elias did not falter. Humans were remarkably resilient. They faced predators, hostile planets, and deadly creatures with courage and ingenuity. This was just another trial. "You move well," she said, her voice carrying an almost imperceptible amusement. "But let's see if your mind is as quick as your legs." Humans were masters of improvisation, and he had learned to think on his feet in unpredictable situations. He scanned his surroundings, looking for anything to use, anything to gain an advantage. The shadows advanced, controlled by her will. Elias realized he couldn't fight them directly. Brute force would be useless. Instead, he moved with precision, predicting the paths of the shadows and finding gaps in their reach. Every leap and dodge was calculated, every motion a combination of instinct and observation. Humans excelled when they could adapt quickly, and his mind raced faster than ever. Lysera moved effortlessly alongside him, her steps silent, her expression calm yet powerful. "Impressive," she said. "Most would be terrified, yet you remain composed. Humans are truly fascinating." The shadows recoiled slightly, disrupted by his unexpected movements. "Clever," Lysera acknowledged, her eyes glimmering, "but adaptability alone will not save you." Then an idea struck him. If he could manipulate the gravity fields in the corridor, he could limit her movement, even briefly. Elias dashed toward a control panel embedded in the wall, fingers flying over alien symbols and switches. The lights flickered as the gravity shifted, altering the path of the shadows and slowing Lysera just enough to create space. He could feel the strain of maintaining balance, yet he adjusted instinctively, using momentum to his advantage. Lysera's expression changed, a mixture of surprise and admiration. "Interesting. You think quickly, human. Few possess such ingenuity under pressure." Humans excelled in unpredictability, using creativity and courage to turn the environment to their advantage. Every step, every decision was a calculated risk, and he felt the familiar rush of adrenaline that came with facing a worthy challenge. Lysera followed, shadows shifting like liquid around her. But Elias noticed something remarkable. She was testing him, not attacking to kill. Every obstacle, every shadow was a measure of his skill and wit. Humans thrived in such tests because their creativity often surprised more powerful opponents. He ducked under another surge of shadows, rolled across the floor, and vaulted to another platform. Each move pushed him further, yet he remained composed. The thrill of the chase sharpened his senses. Humans excelled in high-pressure situations because they relied on observation, reasoning, and instinct in perfect harmony. Lysera's voice came from above, calm but commanding. "You are clever, human, but tell me, what is your goal? Survival, curiosity, or something more?" "All of the above," he said finally. Humans survive by observing, adapting, and learning. That is how we thrive. Humans had always turned disadvantage into opportunity, and he had just done so under the gaze of a creature far older and more powerful than himself. Yet he knew the trial was far from over. Lysera was not just testing reflexes. She was testing courage, adaptability, and intellect, the very qualities that humans prized above all. The chase continued through twisting corridors and open observation decks. Shadows swirled like living ribbons, responding instantly to her will. Elias leapt, dodged, and adapted, always analyzing, always learning. Humans thrived in situations where others would falter, using ingenuity to survive. Each move he made was deliberate, each calculation precise. Finally, he reached a section of the station equipped with experimental gravity fields. A sudden idea struck him. If he could lure Lysera into the area, the shifting gravity could slow her, giving him a chance to negotiate or escape. Humans had always used strategy, even against overwhelming odds, and Elias put his plan into action. He feigned a stumble, baiting her closer, then sprinted into the gravity field. The artificial gravity fluctuated wildly, causing Lysera to adjust mid-step. She moved with grace, but even her supernatural abilities were momentarily slowed by the shifting forces. Elias seized the moment, taking careful steps to gain a better position. "You are bold," Lysera said, her tone calm yet tinged with amusement. "Most would have panicked, yet you manipulate the environment to your advantage. Humans are remarkable." He felt a surge of pride, knowing that ingenuity and courage had once again given him a fighting chance. As the gravity field stabilized, Elias stood firm, catching his breath while keeping a wary eye on Lysera. Humans had always survived because they combined intelligence, courage, and adaptability. This encounter was no different. He had survived the first real test, and he knew the next would be even more challenging. Lysera studied him, her glowing eyes reflecting curiosity and admiration. "You are interesting human. I have tested many, observed many, yet few respond with such clarity, courage, and cunning. Perhaps there is more to your species than I first assumed. You have potential, Captain Vance. Most would have failed long before now, but you have shown resourcefulness that is worth noting. Remember this lesson: courage, creativity, and understanding can turn even the most dangerous situation into an advantage. Humans are unpredictable, and that is your greatest strength." The trial had been dangerous, yes, but it had also confirmed something he had always believed. Humans were capable of extraordinary feats, even when confronted with the unknown and the powerful. As he walked away, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Humans survived because they observed, adapted, and acted with courage. That combination had allowed them to explore the stars, face unknown dangers, and thrive where others had failed. And now, in the presence of Lysera, the vampire queen, that same spirit would continue to guide him. The test was over for now. But Elias knew one thing for certain: humans would continue to rise, to challenge, and to survive. And he was ready for whatever came next. The chase had ended, but Elias Vance knew that this was only the beginning of his encounter with Lysera. The vampire queen was unlike any being he had ever met. She was powerful, intelligent, and patient. The trials she had put him through were not meant to destroy, but to measure. Elias, a human explorer, had survived because of observation, courage, and ingenuity, the very traits that had allowed humans to thrive across countless worlds. Now, he would face a different kind of challenge, understanding her motives and finding common ground. He followed her through the quieter corridors of Elysium Orbital, noticing that the station seemed to recognize her presence. Lights dimmed slightly as she passed, and shadows seemed to curve around her, yet she moved with elegance, never touching the walls. Elias walked carefully, studying her, learning, as humans had always done when encountering the unknown. Observation had kept his species alive through dangers far more extreme than a single powerful alien. Finally, Lysera led him to a hidden atrium, a serene space filled with plants from across the galaxy. The air was cool and fragrant, and the soft hum of the station's systems faded into a calm background. Sunlight, or the closest approximation of it, poured through translucent panels in the ceiling, casting gentle light over the alien flora. Elias realized that this place was untouched by her powers, a neutral ground where conversation could happen. Humans had always thrived in negotiation and diplomacy, and this environment would allow him to think clearly. "Why have you brought me here?" Elias asked, his voice steady but curious. Lysera's eyes glimmered faintly as she regarded him. "I wish to speak," she said simply. "The chase demonstrated your courage and ingenuity. Now I wish to see if your mind can match your spirit." Most creatures either flee, attack blindly, or hesitate with fear. You adapted. You observed, calculated, and acted. That is unusual, even remarkable. I wish to see if your species possessed qualities that endure beyond physical strength. "And did I pass?" he asked lightly, though his mind was alert. "You survived," she said, her voice calm. "That is a beginning. Survival alone is not enough. I wish to know if humans are capable of understanding, negotiation, and strategic thought. The galaxy is vast, filled with dangers and opportunities alike. Strength alone is rarely sufficient." Humans had always turned disadvantages into opportunities. Diplomacy, strategy, and understanding had allowed them to navigate conflicts, explore new worlds, and survive where others perished. "Then let us begin," he said. For hours they spoke. Elias learned that Lysera had ruled for centuries, guiding civilizations quietly from the shadows, sometimes intervening, sometimes observing. She had seen empires rise and fall, technologies evolve, and species transform. Most beings feared her, misunderstanding the depth of her knowledge and the patience with which she exercised power. Humans, in her eyes, were new and untested, yet capable of astonishing creativity and boldness. "You humans are fascinating," she said at one point. "Your species is young, yet resilient. You face challenges that would destroy many others, and you do so with courage, wit, and a desire to understand. That is remarkable." He realized that Lysera was testing not only him, but humanity itself, seeing if they were worthy of trust, observation, or perhaps alliance. "I believe humans can be allies," he said finally. "We survive against impossible odds, and we thrive when challenged. Perhaps we can share knowledge, help each other, and face dangers together rather than alone. Perhaps there is merit in your suggestion. Tell me, human, why should I believe your species can be more than mere curiosity or entertainment? We survive because we do not give up, even when the odds are against us, and we value understanding as much as strength. That is why you should consider us allies rather than mere subjects of curiosity. You may lack the patience and long-term perspective of older species. Perhaps there is value in observation, collaboration, and guidance. Perhaps we can learn from one another." "Then let us find a way," he said. "Humans are persistent. We do not give up on opportunity, and we do not abandon those we trust. If we work together, I believe we can achieve more than either species alone. Perhaps your species has qualities worth more than I first assumed. But remember this, trust is earned, not given. The next steps will be revealing. You must continue to show courage, insight, and adaptability." Now the challenge was to demonstrate trustworthiness, diplomacy, and strategic thinking, qualities that had ensured humanity's survival for millennia. As they walked back through the atrium, Elias noticed the subtle details around him. The faint glow of bioluminescent plants, the way the station's artificial gravity subtly adjusted to their movements, and the calm hum of machinery that seemed to echo with knowledge and patience. Humans had always paid attention to details, turning observation into advantage. He realized that this skill would be invaluable in the coming days. Lysera spoke again, her voice calm, yet carrying an undercurrent of authority. "You humans have potential. Few species combine courage, creativity, and insight as you do. I will continue to observe and perhaps guide. But know this, the galaxy is vast and dangers are everywhere. Even now, unseen threats may test your species in ways you cannot yet imagine." He would continue to demonstrate these qualities not just for himself but for humanity. "You will see," he said confidently. "Humans do not back down from challenges. We face them, adapt, and overcome. That is who we are. Observation will continue, and lessons will be learned." As they parted ways for the evening, Elias felt a renewed sense of purpose. Humans had always risen to challenges, often exceeding expectations. And now, in the presence of a creature as powerful and ancient as Lysera, he would continue to demonstrate resilience, creativity, and courage. The galaxy was vast, filled with dangers and opportunities alike. Humans had survived because they adapted, observed, and acted with intelligence and boldness. And Captain Elias Vance intended to show the Vampire Queen that humanity was a species worth noticing, trusting, and perhaps even allying with. The trials were far from over, but Elias was ready. Humans thrived against impossible odds, and this would be no exception. The calm of Elysium Orbital was shattered just as the station entered the shadow of a nearby asteroid belt. Alarms blared, lights flickered, and the hum of machinery was drowned out by a sudden surge of panic among the station's residents. Captain Elias Vance immediately assessed the situation. Humans had always thrived under pressure, not by succumbing to fear, but by analyzing, adapting, and acting decisively. He rushed through the corridors, his senses alert, his mind racing. Something was attacking the station, but it was unlike any threat he had encountered before. Alien mercenaries, rogue drones, or cosmic predators, he could not tell. All he knew was that the survival of countless lives, human and alien alike, now depended on quick thinking and action. Lysera appeared silently beside him, her presence commanding yet calm. Her eyes glimmered crimson, reflecting the flashing lights and chaos around them. Elias felt a thrill of determination. Humans had always faced overwhelming odds with ingenuity and courage. This was simply another challenge to overcome. "They are attempting to breach the station," she said, her voice steady. "Most of these attackers are not armed to fight me, yet they underestimate your species." Yet time and again, they had proven their intelligence, adaptability, and strategic thinking. Now, those qualities would be put to the ultimate test. He sprinted to the central control hub, calculating the quickest route while avoiding debris and alarmed residents. The human mind excelled under chaos because it could prioritize, adapt, and improvise faster than most species. Elias' fingers flew over the control panels, issuing commands, locking doors, and rerouting energy to critical systems. Lysera moved beside him effortlessly, her presence both protective and intimidating. She was powerful, but Elias realized that humans had one advantage that even she had to respect: ingenuity. While she wielded ancient strength and supernatural abilities, humans could anticipate, adapt, and manipulate environments in ways that were unpredictable, even to the most experienced. The first wave of attackers breached the outer defenses. Rogue drones surged through airlocks, their mechanical limbs clanging against reinforced doors. Elias analyzed their patterns quickly, predicting their movements and using the station's automated systems to trap them in containment fields. Humans had always excelled at turning tools into weapons, and he applied that principle flawlessly. Lysera observed silently, her eyes glowing faintly. "You move quickly, think quickly, and adapt without hesitation," she remarked. "Your species is remarkable." The attackers regrouped, deploying strange energy weapons that pulsed with unstable power. They aimed for the station's central hub, where the life support systems were concentrated. A direct hit could destroy the entire station. Elias' heart raced, but his mind remained calm. Humans had always succeeded by thinking faster than the threat, by using strategy over brute force. He activated a series of environmental controls, flooding corridors with artificial fog and redirecting gravity fields to slow the attackers' advance. The drones stumbled and faltered, giving him the crucial seconds needed to guide them into containment. Human ingenuity had once again turned the tide, and Elias felt a surge of pride. Lysera moved forward, her speed and power unmatched, neutralizing attackers that breached the first line of defenses. Yet she allowed Elias to lead in strategic decisions, recognizing the human ability to think creatively under pressure. She rarely partnered with others in this way, but she was intrigued by his courage, intelligence, and adaptability. "You do not fear me," she said as they moved together through the chaos. "That is unusual. Most would hide, scream, or fight blindly. You adapt. That is how humans succeed where others fail." A particularly large drone surged toward the life support core, its energy weapon charged and deadly. Elias calculated its trajectory in seconds, redirecting a nearby gravity field to destabilize it midair. The drone stumbled, giving Lysera the opening to neutralize it effortlessly. Humans had always used creativity and speed to compensate for physical limitations, and this was a perfect example. As the battle continued, Elias noticed a group of civilians trapped in a corridor. Without hesitation, he sprinted toward them, recalculating the environmental controls to clear a safe path. Humans had always protected one another, relying on teamwork, quick thinking, and courage. He guided the group to safety, all while directing defenses and anticipating the next wave of attackers. Lysera observed this quietly, her expression unreadable. Then she spoke, her voice carrying a hint of admiration. "Your species has a strength beyond physicality. You are brave, clever, and resilient. Few would risk themselves for others while facing such danger." Humans thrived on cooperation and empathy, understanding that survival was not just about individual strength, but collective ingenuity. This principle had allowed humanity to survive countless dangers across the galaxy. The attackers began to retreat, realizing that their assault was failing. The combination of human ingenuity and Lysera's overwhelming power had turned the tide. Humans had always succeeded when they leveraged intelligence, creativity, and courage against seemingly impossible odds. Elias allowed himself a brief moment to catch his breath, surveying the aftermath. The station had survived, lives were saved, and the attackers had been neutralized. Lysera stood beside him, her eyes reflecting both power and a newfound respect. "You humans are impressive," she said softly. "Few would have managed this without panic, chaos, or error. You have shown courage, intelligence, and the ability to adapt under pressure. Your species is remarkable." Humanity's greatest strengths were not brute force, but courage, creativity, and the ability to learn quickly from every challenge. "Thank you," he said simply. "Humans survive by thinking, adapting, and never giving up. That is who we are. Perhaps your species is more valuable than I first assumed. Humans possess qualities that even I with centuries of knowledge must respect. Courage, ingenuity, and resilience, these are traits worth noting." Humans had always thrived when facing overwhelming odds, turning challenges into triumphs, and this encounter had proven that once again. As the station returned to calm, Elias and Lysera walked through the observation deck, side by side. The lights reflected off the vast cosmos beyond the windows, and Elias felt a renewed sense of purpose. Humans had survived countless dangers because they combined courage, intelligence, and ingenuity. Now, in the presence of one of the galaxy's oldest and most powerful beings, they had demonstrated those qualities once more. Lysera spoke finally, her tone calm but with an unmistakable note of approval. "You have proven that your species is worthy of consideration. Perhaps humans are not merely curious creatures but valuable allies. There is much I can teach you, and perhaps much you can teach me. Humans survive and thrive when we face challenges, and we do not back down from the unknown. Together, we can accomplish far more than either of us alone. Perhaps these qualities will shape the future." Humans had always been underestimated, yet time and again, they had proven that their ingenuity and spirit could turn the tide against any threat. Elias felt a quiet pride. Humans thrived when challenged, when underestimated, and when facing the unknown. This had been another test, and humanity had emerged stronger, smarter, and more respected. As the stars glimmered beyond the station's windows, Elias extended his hand toward Lysera. "Shall we continue where we left off?" he asked, a faint smile on his lips. Lysera's eyes softened, and she took his hand. "Yes," she said, "but now as equals." Humans had shown their courage, ingenuity, and resilience. They had survived where others might have failed. And in that moment, Elias realized that humanity's greatest power was not strength, not speed, but spirit. Humans endured, humans adapted, humans thrived, and the galaxy had taken notice.